Good morning. Let's add to our playlist on Black Lives Matter. When they were rioting and throwing bombs in the street, I was conscious to look for a few things. One of them was whether or not they would talk about just what it is that they were complaining about, and they just wouldn't do it. All they would say is Donald Trump is bad, white guys are bad, and let's burn it all down. One of the things that you complain about here that affects black lives are housing projects. Whether they're in Chicago or Detroit or Poland, you just don't put people in housing projects. They don't stand a chance. We have a terrific example, one of our personal examples we're going to use. Let me remind myself of it. The person you're listening to was in elementary school, and I had a buddy, and when we both came home from school, he would go practice his violin in the backyard, and when he was done, and you could tell when he was finished, I would go over to his house and I would enter through the secret Man from U.N.C.L.E. tunnel entrance, and we would play, and then I would go home. And we lived a life straight out of Leave It to Beaver. But he couldn't stay there. His aunt had brought him out from one of the big cities on the northeastern part of the country to try and get him away from all of the stuff that was going on at the time. And she couldn't afford it. She had no husband, and although she tried very hard, she just couldn't make ends meet. Elementary school children cannot pay for their moms. It's just the way it is. As I remember right, she looked, sounded, and acted just like every stereotypical 1950s professional housewife, and I'm sure she was. Even though her skin was black as coal, she was an American housewife. And so he had to move back to one of the housing projects in the northeastern, one of the big cities in the northeastern part of the country. One of them that's on TV so much, and you know what happened to him. He didn't stand a chance. It's a terrific example of the difference between individual rights and home economics and individual rights. All they had to do was come across with a family budget and get out of her way and let her do her job. They could have even shown up with a couple more children, and everything would have worked out. Life would have gone on, and that's that. They wouldn't do it. Let me remind myself of something. When you talk about housing projects in places like Chicago and Detroit and Philadelphia, I have to remind myself that you're actually talking about the people who live in the foothills and put them in there. That's Dr. Reverend Martin Luther King and Al Sharpton and Jesse Jackson, Al the Afro, and Harry the Hippie and Donna the Feminist. They're the ones that had all the resources, and they're the ones that were given all the money. And housing projects are people who live as a consequence of that. They do all the producing, while the people who live in the foothills do all the consuming. Those are communist housing projects. Let's start to end this anecdote. We have to gather our gang in the playground. And so within our gang in the playground are the people listening to this who actually live in those housing projects in Chicago and Philadelphia and those places. And so we'll all stop and we'll all turn and look to you. And you just have to kind of make up your mind, don't you? They'll always have your emotion. A human being is hardwired not to be able to stand up to a bum's rush. And this camp will never have that emotion. And so let me go through the drill. Let me use our drill. I take a step back. I consciously tell myself the priest is a good guy and the pimp is a bad guy. The priest says, say what you mean and mean what you say, and the pimp knows how to manipulate and intimidate people. And that's the classic battle of good and evil. The Catholic battle. It's the classic battle of good and evil. And so I tell myself, I'm going to put the Pope in charge, and the minute I say that, I sort of wake up and I realize that I'm starting to have a sense of free will right then and there. I straighten myself up emotionally. These thoughts that fly through my head that have to do with sex, have to do with getting a gal pregnant, and fear and that sort of thing. And I become a good person, even though it's not a natural thing. And then I become a good husband, and then I become a good father, and I become a good citizen. You're the next generation of the young and big and strong, and you're just going to have to go through this and stand up and do something about all this. I tried. I lost. But no one can accuse me of not trying. How about if you're the gal and you live in a housing project and you're the stereotypical welfare mother? Thank you, thank you, thank you for trying to raise the kids. But you don't stand a chance in that place. And so you have to do the same thing. You go through the drill. You straighten yourself up emotionally. And if you're going to be the good mother, then you get to play in that silly tennis tournament they have every year. You have to be a good person, and then a good wife, and then a good mother, and then a good citizen. And if you're going to do that, you're going to have to speak up and start being terribly bossy. How big of a house or a condo or whatever they have in Chicago and Philadelphia and Detroit? How big of a condo do you need? You need a 1,500 square foot place with a living room that's 12 by 20 and a bedroom that's 10 by 12 for at least 2 children of the same gender and that sort of thing. You have to learn this stuff. You have to go get educated. And if you do, then the world can start being centered around you because you centered the world around getting into heaven after you die. So let's end at this anecdote. You're just going to have to choose now. And hope you choose this gang in the playground. You're a Yank. You're a government that's run by the people itself. See you on the next anecdote.